Okay. Let's see. How do I get out of this thing? Here we go. All right. So this is Component Studio. It is a tool that will help you design your components. So you're like your cards, your tiles, your chits, that sort of thing. It's not really there for something that you're designing one of. It's something that you need to design 10, 100, 1,000 of, right? So if you're designing a game board, you're only designing one of those. You might as well just use Photoshop or Illustrator or something like that to do it. It's going to be a better tool for that, honestly. It's going to be way better. But if you're designing something where there are 100 of them and it's a variation on a theme, like a deck of cards, for example, usually a deck of cards is all laid out the same, just has different icons or information on it, right? But all those icons and information are in the same locations every time. And so Component Studio, basically how it works is you design exactly one of those and it will design the other 100 for you. So it's pretty cool. So as an example, I designed my own little Munchkin cards here just to kind of show you what it's capable of. And so I designed exactly one, and then it's going through and actually designing the rest of them for me in real time. So these are actually being rendered in real time, not, I didn't design each of these individually. I'm going to walk you through how that process worked, but I thought it would be helpful for you to see right from the get-go that you can design pretty much anything you want. And if you notice, as we're looking at this, as we're looking at these, they have slightly different layouts. So like for a goblin, it has a different background color than when I was on this coin, different background color. The goblin has a level up here that the coin doesn't have, and it also has a level down here. So it's got different information that is being displayed in different locations depending on the type of card that is being rendered. And again, it's not just for cards, it's for tiles or chits or anything where you're having more than one that you have to design. It'll automate that design process. You'll find that however long it takes you to design one card right now, it'll take you roughly that amount of time to do one card in Component Studio. Where you get the savings is it will also design the other 100 cards for you. But even more impressive is when you have to iterate. So you're play testing your game and the feedback is, I can't see the icons that you put on here because you put them on the left and they're buried in my hand. If you put them on the right, I could have seen them, or vice versa. So now I have to move the icons on 100 cards. I don't have to go into Photoshop or whatever and open up 100 individual images. I literally just make the change in one place, all 100 are re-rendered, and then I can output a new PDF to do a print and play, or I can upload it directly to the Game Crafter from Component Studio or whatever. So let's walk you through the process. To start with, you're going to create a project. Project is really just a name. It's a label. So think of it like a folder. It's where you're going to put all the stuff for this particular thing. The project has all kinds of information. We'll come back to that in a little bit that you can store in here, but it's all optional. You can also upload images. So if you have icons or art, illustrations, that kind of stuff that you want in here, you can upload all that stuff. You can also upload fonts. So in this case, in order to replicate, oops, I need to switch to Component Studio Unleashed. Here we go. So in order to replicate Munchkin, I had to use the fonts that Munchkin has. So I had to go find out what are those fonts and download them, put them on Component Studio. Component Studio actually comes with 800 or 900 fonts that you can use, so you don't have to go download them, but if you're trying to replicate something specific, obviously you need the specific font. So you can go put in your own fonts, you can search for the fonts that are already in the system, and you just have a lot of that stuff readily available to you. Then you need data to run this. This is where the secret sauce is with Component Studio. You have to import some data from somewhere. So you either have to create a spreadsheet and upload a CSV file. So you can use Excel or any spreadsheet program that you're familiar with. You can also use Google Sheets and import from that. And you're going to get some data in here. You can, which is what I do, just type the data directly into Component Studio and create your cards that way. So once you have your data, though, once you have your fonts, your data, your images, all that stuff, then you're ready to actually start designing your components. And so this is where the meat of what you're going to do. You're going to be in the designer most of the time. That other stuff is just the prep work that you would need to do anyway if you're creating your own cards. So let's just go through kind of one at a time the different pieces. I'm gonna go ahead and actually hide all this stuff. Have I done it all? Oh wait, these two. Okay, so we have ourselves a background. Now, as I said before, if we switch between cards, I have different backgrounds that are available to me. Oops, I have that one muted. So when I'm in a coin, it has a different background than when I'm in a goblin, because that's the way Steve Jackson's game works with Munchkin. If you're dealing with treasure, it has one background. If you're dealing with knocking down a door, it has a different background. In this case, I happen to use an image, but you can very easily use something else. So here, you'll see. Where am I at here? Or I'm sorry, I used a background color. So what I've got going on here is really just this. I put in, let me turn off the overlay. I put in a background color for a box, just of what color it should be. Then I went ahead and said that let's put a border on that box, right? And I set it to a specific color. And then I said that I want that border to have round corners, right? So we just flip that little switch, and now we've got our background. So it's pretty straightforward. You're just putting in a color, a shape that you want it to be, whether or not you want round corners. Now I've got a background. It's pretty simple.
To define the size of the background?
Sure. So by default, when you add anything to the system, here, let me minimize this for a second. If I add anything to the system, so I'm just going to go ahead and add a circle to the system here. So I've added a circle. It's going to have a default size that it comes with. In this case, there's a radius for a circle, obviously, for the size. And you just type it in. If you're doing a box, it actually fills the whole card or tile or whatever. It automatically takes the size of the thing. But I can type in like 300 here, and now I've got a 300 pixel image instead, or a circle instead.
With the box, though, can you make it a different size?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. I'm going to show you that just right now. I just wanted to start with that. So if I add a box, so you can see it fills the whole thing. I've got a position of where I want the box to be. So right now it's using variables, which I wasn't going to get into just yet, but you can use a variable, but I'm going to just type in, I want it to start at 50-50. And if you have the overlays on, you can see where the pixels, there's a ruler here to show you exactly where the different pixels are. So if I say I want that to start at 150 and 150, for example, then the top left corner will be there. And if I want the box to be 300 pixels wide and 100 pixels tall, right? So that's how it's working. You can define anything you want. But by default, it uses the whole space. So
position means top left corner.
in the case of a box, yes. In the case of a circle, position means the center point of the circle. So it really depends on the object that you're working with. You'll come to learn those pretty quickly. It's how it works in Illustrator too. Like a circle is defined by its center rather than its, or any of the other programs that you'd use. Okay, so I've gone ahead and with them, but again, we'll talk about that later.
If the text is like longer, so it was a longer sentence, is it going to scale that entire thing down?
Yeah, so let's just type in some, random stuff here.
You'll be able to tell pretty quickly if it's...
All right.
Oh, it does line breaks too.
Oh yeah, it totally does line breaks. So if I put this back to 40 pixels, it's still going to look at that size, right? Because it's at this point scaling. It's saying that ideally I would like this to be 40 pixels tall, but if you don't have room, start shrinking it. Does that make sense? Now, if I take this back out of here, you'll see that it scales back up to the 40 pixels that I'm looking for. And I don't even have to have fit text to box in this case because 40 pixels fits within this box. It was designed for that purpose. Make sense? Okay.
Is there, by chance, a fit image to box later on that you're going to talk
There isn't a fit image to box. So you can define an area where an image has to fit into, yes. But it's not quite like this. So I do actually, no, I'll come back to that later. I don't want to get ahead of myself because I can get into some really crazy advanced. You can do amazing things in this, right? But baby steps. All right. So anyway, so the cursed thing is using the same thing we did before with this conditionally render. I just have the cursed variable in here. Oh, and let me show you variables quick. So let's take that out of there. If we scroll all the way to the bottom, all of the variables that you have defined from your spreadsheet are popped in here. So I can just say, copy the cursed variable. I just click on it and that copies it. And then I can come up here, and if I paste into this field, it just pastes the variable in there for me. So what that does, by putting the variable in there, it says, if this variable is empty, we're not going to render this field at all. We're not going to render anything that's in here. So, for example, I could type in, well, we have this text thing going on. But if I go back over to here, see how cursed is blank in all of these? But there's a 1 in this one, so it's not empty. So because it's not empty, I can go, it will render it on this one ring, but if I go to the wedding band, it doesn't render it. Make sense? Okay. So that's basically text in a nutshell. I'm doing those same things for like level, bonus, all of those things. There's an if basically going on. If level is specified, display a level, right? So in this case, with level, there's something a little bit strange going on though. I've got text in here, but I also have a variable in here. Anything inside of brackets, or braces, I should say, anything inside of braces in Component Studio is considered code at that point. So everything outside the braces is just text. You can type whatever you want. So if I type in gobbledygook, it's going to be fine right there, right? It'll actually, oh, you know what? Do I have this even turned on? Oh, this is a level, so I have to actually go to something that would have a level. There we go. So there's my gobbledygook. Now, the thing is, if I were to take this gobbledygook out of here and paste it inside of this bracket, or these braces, it's gonna give me an error. As soon as let me click out of the field. There we go. Malformed template detected. And it'll tell you, add text 25. So I'm over here, text 25. So now I know where I've actually screwed up my template. So, because it's expecting code there. When you're typing code, code has to be precise. It has to be something that the computer can understand, right? Because the computer is trying to interpret whatever you put in there. So that's why you can't just type whatever you want inside of the brackets.
Could you scroll back down to the bottom where you had all your variables shown?
Sure.
So since you've got the component and system variables, does it also have a reference for the Boolean statements like the if equals or if not?
No, because so there are hundreds of those. And so if I were to display all the different things that could be in code, it would use up a lot of space. So instead, we have help pages, which you can get to from anywhere in the system, that will describe how to use an if, how to use a function, use all these other things. And I'll show you those as we get going. Okay? So yeah, I don't want to, the goal here is to give you some quick things to do, but when you get into that sort of stuff, there's so many options. I don't want to overwhelm the person who doesn't care about code, right? I'm more concerned about the person just getting into Component Studio. If you're getting into code, you can handle going to a help page to look for that.
The other question I had was about scaling. So I can see that you can scale text, and you started out with a template that defined one of the card archetypes, bridge, poker, whatever it might be.
Yep.
Can you just change the template and it will resize? So if you went from poker to small,
Yeah.
would it make all of those changes for you, or would you need to create a new one using?
It depends on how you designed the particular deck. So let's change this from, right now it's a US game deck, which is the size of a Magic, or I'm sorry, not Magic, Munchkin card, our US game size, that's what they use. So if we switched it to Tarot, which is a much taller format, if you design your template correctly, correctly is the wrong word. If you design your template to scale, then yeah, it will actually fit. Now I don't actually know if I did that in this case because I whipped this all up in like an hour. So, oh, it looks like I did. So you see the background is scaling appropriately there. So if we go to slime, it should show the level because that's what I've got going on. Yeah, so the level's in the right place. So yeah, but you don't have to design your thing to scale. You can design it just for that one card type. If you design it to scale, you're more flexible. You can change your card type sizes and you're all good. But anyway, okay.
But like that 40 didn't scale up bigger. It's still 40 whether it's on that card.
Right. It'd still be 40, right. Yep.
Are there like relative sizes that you can use? If you need, like, if you're trying to make it like a third the size, the width of the card,
Mm-hmm.
can you tell it a third?
Of course you can.
So it's not just absolute, you can do a percent.
Oh, right, you can't hear, yeah, sorry. We're streaming all of this, so I need to repeat your question. So your question was, can you say the font size should be a third the width of the thing? You can absolutely do that. Actually, you would do it based on height rather than width, but yes. And somebody had a question over here. I thought I heard somebody shout something out. Was it you, Jay?
I was just saying, so instead of just being absolute, like 30 pixels, 50 pixels, you could be relative and use a percent.
Yes. So the question was, can you use a relative font size, like a percentage or something along those lines? The answer is yes. It's not a percentage, it's a fraction, but yes. Fractions and percentages can be the same, right? Okay, moving on, unless there are other questions.
Question, dotted line, is that what gets printed on the card, or is that a cut line?
This, you're talking about this red and blue thing here?
No, the dotted blue line.
The dotted blue line is part of the overlay. So let me turn off everything. I should have done that. Let's just turn off all of this stuff. There we go. All right. So when you first start your design, you're going to start with a template from the Game Crafter. And this is just an overlay. So if I turn it off, there's literally nothing there, right? The overlay, if I turn it on, it shows you the red cut line. That's where the card will get cut out. The blue line is, the blue dotted line is the safe zone. So anything inside of there is where you want to have important text and icons and that sort of stuff. The reason for that is in printing, there's something called drift that can happen. So it could move over a millimeter one way or another. And if you went right up to the cut line, you could perhaps lose a character of text or something like that, right? So you want to put the important stuff inside the blue line. The reason that the image actually goes all the way out to this pink edge is because you need something called bleed to deal with drift. So my background color needs to go all the way to the edge of the image, even though the cut line is right here. So that way, if it moves over a pixel or whatever, I still have a background there, not just a white segment of card, okay? And then that also puts in this ruler for you. That's the last thing that's there. And so it's showing you 100 pixels, 200 pixels, 300 pixels. The reason it's showing you in pixels is, well, first of all, we're dealing with images, but 300 pixels is an inch. So you can actually, you can convert into inches or metric or whatever you want. Pixels are the important thing for raster style images, which is what we're working on here. And we position everything in pixels in the system. Other questions? Okay.
Reorder steps.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to follow.
Yep, no, that's fine. So how you reorder a step is you click on the number over here. The numbers over here tell you what order the steps will be executed in. If you click on one, it becomes a little text area. So I could say that the background, well, maybe I want that one to render first, so I'll set that as 5. So now that will actually render before the door background here, the treasure background. In this case, it doesn't matter because only one of those two is going to get rendered. But you can flip the order of operations and then it'll render that one first, the next one goes on top of that, and so on. So you're basically creating a sandwich, right? You're starting with your piece of bread at the bottom, you're adding filler until you get to the top. And so the lowest number, like a 1 or a 2 or a 10, is going to be rendered before 100 would be rendered. It does not automatically reorganize these. When you type this in, if I type 5, it doesn't automatically put this treasure background up to the top. What we found was people were confused by the thing moving all of a sudden, and so we just leave it where it is. If you want it to be in the proper order, just refresh your page. So when I come back here, you'll see that treasure background is now at the top, right? So if it bothers you, that's the thing to do in that case. But people got really confused when all of a sudden, like if they were typing that from 100 to 5, it would disappear. And they're like, oh no, what happened? But it just had moved it to the top and they didn't realize. So that's why we don't actually move those around. Okay, so moving on. We have done that stuff. We've done text. I don't think there's anything special in here. No. Okay. So let's talk about images. Every good card's got to have some images on it, right? Like games are half about art, I think, to make it look pretty, to make it engage you with the theme, to make you pick it up off of a shelf when you're going to buy it. Art is at least half the battle in designing games. So of course you need to be able to insert images. And so in this case, how it works is you can either type in the URL to into this box, and that means that you can use an image that's out on the web someplace. If you've uploaded it to something like Dropbox or Imager or Google Drive, you can just paste the URL from those services directly into here and it'll be able to render it. Or in my case, I'm using a variable, and that variable points back to something that's in here. Right here is the image, that's the URL for that particular card. And how I got that URL in there was that I uploaded an image to here into Component Studio. So Component Studio can just host your images for you, which is very useful for a lot of reasons, which we can get to later. But then once you have that, you can actually hit this little drop-down button when you're inside of, well, if you're doing it in your spreadsheet offline, you can actually just hit this copy button right here, and it'll actually give you the URL to the image, just like that. So I've got the URL to the image. That way I could just paste that right into my spreadsheet, whatever it is that I'm editing in. If you happen to do like me and you're editing right in Component Studio, you're editing your data, if you click this little drop-down button, you can hit Choose Image, and then you can actually just go look at your folders, and it'll show you your images, and you just click on the one that you want, and it'll put the URL into the field for you. So that's how we got the image in there. To your question before, the image is actually larger than I need for this particular thing. So if you type in a pixel size, either a width or a height, it'll scale it proportionally down to that size. So that's how you do that kind of fit an image to a box. Now, if I typed it in both directions, if this image isn't square, it's going to stretch it one way or the other. And this one is square, so let's do a different thing. I'll do 200. It's probably not something that you want to do, right? Your image is going to look all weird and squished. So you want to type it into just one or the other of those two boxes, and it will scale all of the images proportionally to that. And that's really it. Like, you have a position of where you want the image to be placed, and then you have the URL, and then you can resize the image. Any questions on that kind of stuff? Yeah.
Is it possible to quickly drag the image and move it around and resize it, or do you have to do those text boxes?
At this point, there is no drag and drop in Component Studio. We're trying, everything's about precision in Component Studio. You want it to be exactly where you need it to be, and dragging and dropping isn't precise. That said, we do understand it is easier, and so it is something we're looking into adding, but it's not. So what it would do is when you're dragging it around, it'll just basically pop the numbers into the box for you. Yeah, we also want you to be able to use code to position things, and dragging and dropping isn't going to help you with code, right? So for example, in this case, what I have in here, I'm just going to copy and paste this out of here into, let's do this, new document. This way I can blow up the text really big and you can see what we're dealing with here. All right, that ought to be big enough everybody can see it. Oop, and then I type something over it. Okay, so this is a good time to start talking about some of the system variables that are in here. Before we talked about your component variables, the things that are coming from your spreadsheet. That's your component variables. There are also system variables. These are things that the system calculates for you. So in this case, if I want that image to be centered in my document, in my card, right? So if I type in dollar underscore is saying system variable, that's the group of system variables, dollar underscore dot gets you there. Then you have the name of the variable. In this case, the name of the variable is center me x, or center mex, as it looks. All right. Center me x means along the x-axis, I want to be centered. Right. So it's always going to give me, if I said that this is 500 pixels wide, which is what I said, right, and the card is 825 pixels wide, it's going to say 825 minus 500 divided by 2 gives me that margin on this side and that margin on this side, right? So it's doing a bunch of math for you. You don't have to know that math. You don't have to care what that formula is. You just have to know that center means it's going to center. So that's how those kinds of variables work. There's all kinds of things down in here. So somebody was talking about before, how do I make sure that it's a percentage, that the text is a percentage of the height of the thing? So I actually have a variable of what the height of the thing is. What's the height of the card, right? So if I want the text to be, let's say, an eighth the height of the card, you know, I want it to take up an eighth, I can just do divided by 8, like that. And I can use that for my font size at that point. It's not. I mean, lots of programming languages look similar. It is not JavaScript. It is its own language. And the reason for that is we don't want to, there are certain functions that could get really dangerous. So, yeah.
Did you say actually the $sign underscore and the dot are
Yeah.
defining it as a system variable?
So the dollar underscore is, dollar defines it as a variable, all right? Underscore defines it as a system variable. The dot is a category, so there are other categories of variables we'll get into later. There are data set variables and there are project variables. So they will have a different thing instead of underscore here, but they will all have $sign dot in those. So $sign just tells you it's a variable. And then the underscore is what's telling you it's a system variable. And again, you don't necessarily need to know the difference between them. You just need to know that a variable exists that does a thing. So again, anything inside of braces, you can do anything you want inside of braces that is code. So math, anything math related can be done inside the braces. So if I just wanted to say that my font is going to be 42 times 56 divided by 30, and then I want to do all this, and then when the final result is I want to minus 3, it would do that, because it's just math. It knows how to do math. Dusty, you had your hand up.
Just out of curiosity, you said that the font size would be that value. Are the font sizes in pixels then?
Yeah, everything in the system is in pixels. So,
Does that vary from font to font though, or?
nope.
Okay.
Yep. So every font gets rendered. So yeah, every font gets rendered. It's going to be a little bit different, obviously, because different fonts have different X heights and baselines and all of those kinds of things. But it is just like you can do in, let's say, Word, you might do a 12-point font. Points don't actually mean anything. Like most people would not know how to define a point in size, right? So it doesn't really mean anything to the average person. I could give you the formula for how you define a point relative to a pixel versus an inch, that sort of thing. But it's just a measurement. And in this case, to be consistent, unlike, let's say in some programs, you might use inches in one place, pixels in another place, and points in another place. And it gets really confusing with all these different things. We have unified everything across the stream on pixels. And so that way, you can look at your ruler over here and go, I want my font to be from 100 pixels to 200 pixels. I want it to use that whole area. And so now I can just say, that's 100 pixels tall, right? And so that's what that's doing. Okay, let's see. So that's images. The rest of this is just putting text into the boxes in different ways. So I'm just positioning it in different areas. So for example, let's turn on rules. Rule, I'm doing something a little different than I was doing with other things. So you'll note that the rule always kind of pushes itself toward the bottom, right? If we go back here, let's see. I'm putting a box on it so you can see. So all I've done is I've defined a box where the rule has to go, and then I said, align that box to the bottom, or align the text to the bottom of that box. So that way, that my text, no matter how tall that text is or how much text that there is in there, it'll automatically align the text to the bottom of that box. So if you need positioning on the bottom of something, you can do that pretty easily without having to really do anything fancy. Yeah?
So if you wanted the text like that stuff to be in bold,
It is.
pull those, and is that just because you have it bold in the source, or did you have to tag it specially?
Yeah. So his question is, why, if you want something bold, like on here we have bad stuff is bold, how do you get that to work? And that is, I'm glad you brought that question up, because that was literally the next thing I was going to talk about. So with Component Studio, with every text box that you have, you can actually define 2 fonts, not just one. So if we go into the advanced area here, we have the alternate font, and we can set all of the different things about the alternate font in here. When we do that, that allows us to type in, if I use an asterisk and I type in something, I'll just type in something. You'll see that it'll add the something in bold, anything that's inside the asterisk, because what I defined here is my font here is Carlson Antique Italic, and then down here it's Carlson Antique Bold Italic. So you use asterisks to denote that you want the secondary font to be used for displaying something. And so in this case, inside this rules variable, if we go back over to our dungeon card, what card was that we were just looking at? Goblin. Okay. So if we look at our goblin, and I stretch this thing out, can everybody see that text, or should I blow it up more? Okay. Blow it up a little more? Okay. There we go. So if we look inside of here, I put bad stuff inside of asterisks, so it knew to use the secondary font inside this text box. So you can do really crazy advanced things with that, which we'll get into as we go a little further. But yeah, you can have 2 fonts, and those fonts can have different colors or underlines or background colors or all kinds of different things. You can define them however you want.
Or you could do icons.
Or you can do icons, which we'll get into in a little bit. Let's show you some of the stuff that you can do there. So for example, maybe not just bold, but I also want it to highlight that area. So I'm going to say, oops, this is the main font. I should go into the alternate font highlight. There we go. So now I'm highlighting that. I can pick whatever color I want. So if I decided I wanted it to be red in a background, I can do that, right? If I wanted my font color to be white in this case instead, boom. So now that is, we're doing that background, and everything is highlighted and doing its own thing. And the cool thing is here, again, as we're designing these things, we're designing everything. So when I get to the next card that has bad stuff on it, oops, that one doesn't have it. Let's go to slime. It's already there too, because we're basically setting a global set of things for this deck, so that when we change it in one place, it changes it for everything, and we don't have to go update individual cards on how we want this to appear. Make sense? Okay. All right. So I think that's about it for the basic stuff. Any questions before we move on to some kind of more advanced examples? Yeah.
Would there be any advantage to having separate decks set up in your project for different types of cards?
Right.
Is that sort of immaterial in light of being able to set everything up in variables?
Right. So the question was, is there an advantage? So I could have put, for example, the treasure cards in one deck and the door cards in a different deck. And the question was there any advantage to doing that? There are advantages and disadvantages, and it's completely up to you. So the advantage is the main advantage is you wouldn't have to do if on a bunch of these things, right? So if it's a door, I have this different background. If it's a monster, I have to put the level of the monster at the top, and the other cards don't have a level up there. You know that. So I have these if conditions of display this or don't display this, depending on that. The disadvantage is if any two cards share a particular thing, then you are having to define that thing twice. So if you had different decks. So for example, maybe I have a curse and I have a treasure card or something, I don't know, and they both have a gold value, let's say, for some reason. So now I'm defining the space with the gold value, the space with the image, and the space with the rule about those two different types of cards. I'm having to define them in two different decks. So I'm losing some of my advantage of, you know, having it design all the cards at once, but I gain the advantage of it's a little easier to edit those decks because I don't have so many if conditions all over the place. So it's still saving you time because you're, you know, presumably you have more than one curse card and more than one monster card and that kind of stuff. So it's still saving you time, but it's not saving you quite as much time. But it's easier. So it's really up to you how your workflow works best. There are seats up here if you're looking for a seat. So, yeah.
I had a quick question about card backs.
Sure.
So I was working on a project and I hit an issue where I need a whole bunch of unique card backs.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that can be done?
Card backs, yeah, absolutely. Did I do that in here? I don't remember. Nope, I haven't defined the backs. We can define the backs quick. So here, let's just define the backs live because you have this question. So let's assume, I don't actually know in this case, but let's assume that the background color is the same on the front and the back for each type. So what I'm going to do is use this arrow to copy this step right here and this step right here to the other side of the card. So now when I go to the back, I've got that thing there, whatever I'm looking for. So now I want to put the title of the back on the back thing here. So what I'll do is I'll put in some text. I'll hit this text button there. I've added a text block. What I want to do is come down here and get the card type. I'll grab that as a variable and replace the text that's right here. So now I've got my card type variable in there. So I've got treasure or whatever. Now I'm going to show you something a little bit more advanced right here. Sorry, I wasn't intending to get to this point yet. I'm going to use a function. It's called UCFirst. And I'm just going to type that right in there. And actually, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put it into the big text so you can see what it looks like. Let's get rid of that. So you see the function is UCFirst card type. What that stands for is uppercase first letter. All right? So now, you can't quite see it. Treasure is uppercase. Let's go ahead and center that into the center of the card. So now you can see that the word is uppercase in the first letter. Hold on just a sec. And then let's go ahead and also make that font bigger. And let's make it, I don't know, gold. Make it 100. Gold is terrible. Actually, gold would be okay if we put a stroke around it so you could actually see it a little better. And we'll make it black. And we'll do 200 pixels, like so. Now you can see it a little bit better. All right, yeah, so that's your question.
Sort of, except for the card type is not treasure. So
The card type is not treasure in this case?
yeah, because you're working on it.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, so, oh, I know why that is. Because I need to go back to designs, and so we're working on these dungeon cards. Right now I have it set single back. What I want is a unique back for each one. So then we're going to go back over here. I'm all zoomed in now and I don't know what. Okay, let me zoom back out. Here we go. So now we want to go back to our back. And so we're on a chalice. And if we go to, what were we on before? A slime? There we go.
Thank you.
Okay? So you get those individual things. Yep.
Are you able to do that in sets too? So like these cards have this back, all of these cards have this other back. You can create multiple decks out of one.
Oh yeah, I've got decks which I'll show you later that have like 12 different backs on them. So, yeah. Yep. Did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. I should have asked the question for, no, Jay, I was saying. The question was, can you have lots of different backs in a single deck? The answer was yes, you can do a lot.
Are there some starter templates to be able to play around with where it's like got an icon here and a text box there and some of the basic elements that you can go in and just play around with?
The question is, are there starter templates? The answer is absolutely yes. A person that is in the back of the room right now, Alicia, has actually designed some of these. And if you click on, when you're in the designer area, at the bottom, there's pre-made designs down here. If you click on that link, it will take you to a place on the Game Crafter where you can get pre-made designs of various types. And so there's some blank templates for cards and other things. So Alicia is charging $4 for that privilege, but I think it's worthwhile because it also comes with art, right, Alicia? Yeah. So it comes with full art as well. Or there's one here for $1, or you guys can make your own and put them up in the asset store for free if you want for other people to do it. So there are some pre-made templates. There are also video tutorials showing you exactly how to do it too. So.
Make lots of different decks. When you import it into the Game Crafter, does that change the number of sheets that are used, or does it do it efficiently?
The question is, if you make lots of different decks, does it import efficiently into the Game Crafter? So like, I'm assuming the question is, if I use 5 cards in this deck and 7 cards in that deck, will it go onto the same sheet? And the answer is, of course. The Game Crafter automatically consolidates that sort of stuff for you so that you aren't wasting money on printing extra sheets. So was there another question over here somewhere? No. No. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Going to move on then to some other examples. Okay. Let's do this. Who can read that? It's a little hard. It's a little difficult to read. You can, that sample page that I just showed you go to, there's actually a sample on there for free called the decoder that will generate this for you. And if I stupidly forgot to bring my nice little red sheet of paper, but if you put red over this word comes out perfectly. You can read it easily. And so I'm just going to hide this part so that you can see it. Message, did I put that on there? Yellow. Oh, because I hid that. Yeah, there we go. So you have your message displayed right there, and it's hidden amongst all this other garbage. But if you had a piece of red decoder film, when you put the red decoder film over the top of it, and it's actually in a card, you can have hidden messages for people. This was more commonly used back in the 80s and 90s in games, but I think it's a really useful way to have kind of secret messages in games, and so I built it into Component Studio. Cool thing is that this is really just a bunch of text, so you can put your own text into that field, and so you can actually use all that garbage that's displayed there is really just text, right? So you can have your own garbage. Right? Like if you have the story of your game, you can put your story of your game in there to actually be the thing that obfuscates the message. And so again, this is a free template you can download off the Game Crafter Asset Shop. And it's just editable stuff. So questions, comments on that? It's called Secret Decoder Message.
What's the actual format of those templates? Is it plugged into the Component Studio, or is it just images?
It plugs into Component Studio. These are not images. So when you download it, it's a dot. I'm sorry, I got to repeat the question. So the question was, what's the format of the stuff that you're getting from the Asset Shop? It'll be a .cs design file, and when you get that, you will go right here. You will choose a file to import from your hard drive, and then you will choose which design to import it into. So you can either create a new design or merge it into an existing design, and then hit import, and it brings that stuff into your design. Question?
You talked about the import CSV files. Is there the possibility of exporting CSV files?
Yes. So his question was, you can import CSV files. Can you export them as well? And yes, there's a button to export your CSVs back out of here, so you could bring it in, make some edits within Component Studio, and then export it back out to your spreadsheet if you want. So, yeah.
this is a crazy question. Is there a way of exporting your game from game crafters to this? Assuming that, you know, you
Yeah.
made it in there and now you want to edit it. Here.
The question is, can you import images from the game crafter that are fully done files for your game into Component Studio? The answer is no, because it is a fully rendered image already. It's not the individual pieces that went into making up that image. So that wouldn't be useful to be able to do that.
They give you a print.
So yes, in that case, you could do that for a print and play. He's saying, could you do it for a print and play? Yeah, you can download your images out of the game crafter, upload them into Component Studio, and generate a print and play out of that. So yes, you could do that. I think I've seen 1 or 2 people do that. I don't know if that's useful. If it's useful to you, then do that. Yeah.
I have trouble getting the Google Sheet link to work.
Yeah.
It will give me an error and say the first column needs to be titled quantity, and it is titled quantity, but that's not good enough. I don't understand.
So the question was, she's having some kind of trouble with Google spreadsheets importing. I don't know specifically what the error is. We can work on that during the workshop tonight, but
So it shouldn't be happening.
it shouldn't happen, but maybe something's formatted weird. I don't know. That's if you have a bug or something that you want me to look at, let's do that tonight because we have limited time today. So let's not talk about those here. We'll do those tonight, and we'll figure out why something doesn't work or whatever. Yeah.
Is there a way to do like text replace with an icon? So, you know, I have a long ability text, right? And the middle of that ability text is like game 3, blah, blah, blahs, and you want to replace that with the icon.
Yeah. So his question was, can you put icons in line with text? I think that's the gist of what you're saying. So absolutely yes, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to go ahead and kill this one. We don't have anything there. So we've got a whole lot of stuff going on this particular card, which I want to show you. So one of the things that you were just asking about was putting icons into things. My icon here is in the starting resources. So let's just go ahead and do that. So you can see starting resources here is just a variable in this case, but yet it's a bunch of icons here. If I go over to, what do I want? Let's go to datasets and switch to colony. So this is a different project. We're going to go into leaders and right here, resources. You can see there's a whole bunch of things going on, or a whole bunch of letters in there. Those letters, if I go back, I don't need this anymore. There we go. If I go back to that, you can see that I'm getting icons instead of the letters that I'm typing in. And how I'm doing that is I've actually defined, if I go to, there's a site here called Glyfter. This is a free site. You can also pay. I've paid for it because it's a great site that I use a lot, and I like to support people that do great stuff. But also, you do get an advantage. You can store your fonts in there so you can go back and edit them later, where you can't in the free version. You just have to download it, and otherwise you lose it. But what I've done is for this game, I have defined myself a little font. And so now the letter A is this symbol, and the letter B is this symbol, and so on. So now I can, anytime when I'm using that font, if I type in that letter, I get that icon. And so in this case, I'm just displaying a line of icons, but I can just as easily put some text in there. So let's go back over to the design. So let's say I just wanted some text. Which is in my alternate font, yeah. So I'll change that to this, and I'll make this a, let's see, what do I have? I have some letter spacing in there, so I'm going to turn that off because that makes the text look weird, but it gets the icons further apart in my case. So anyway, you can do all kinds of whatever you want going on in here. But, and of course, you can put that in between each of the characters too, but I have that in my other template over there. So I'm just using the secondary font to put in my font and the primary font to put in my icons. And you can inline them, and we'll get into some of the other inlining techniques as we go here. But since you asked the question, I wanted to get into it right away. Let's look at starting hand. Now, this is going to be a little scary to some of you guys, and I'm sorry for that, but it's super cool. So down here, we've got starting hand. Let me blow this up a little if I can. Oh, that's not blowing that image up any, though. So it says, just for those who may not be able to read it, it says 2 encounter cards, 1 construction card, 2 people cards. If I go back over to, where did I have that? I must have, oh, I replaced it with the font machine, right, or the SVG. So let's do this. Go to data sets, go to leaders. All right, so if we look over here, I've got encounters. It's a little hard to see. Let me blow it up. I've got encounters, construction, and people, and they're just numbers in these columns, right? But when we get over here to the design, it says 2 encounter cards, 1 construction card, no S on the end, and 2 people cards, right? But I just put numbers into the spreadsheet. So here's where the coolness comes in. If we go to starting hand here, I'm going to take all this code out of here and put it into some text where it's easier to read. We can make it bigger. Oops. And let's stretch this out a bit. All right, I'm going to break it down into 3 separate segments to make it easier to handle. All right, so I'm saying if there are any encounters at all, we're dealing with several things in this particular case. This is an if, believe it or not. There's a type of condition called a ternary. And this, like I said, this is going to get scary to some people, so sorry. So condition, question mark is the if, then do this, colon is else, do that. All right? So that's what a ternary looks like. If this condition is true, we're going to do this thing, else we're going to do this thing. Does that make sense? Hopefully? All right, so true is anything that's not empty and it's not 0. In Component Studio, that's the definition of true. If it's not empty and it's not 0, it's true. Okay? So that says if the encounters field is not empty and it's not 0, then we're going to display something. And in this case, it's going to be all of this stuff right here. If it is 0 or it's empty, then we're going to, I just have nothing there. It's 2 quote or 2 half quotes, so it's nothing. It means we're going to display an empty string. So that way, if I have a leader, let's go back over here. I don't have any leaders that have no cards, so never mind. It's probably not even necessary anymore. At an earlier version of this design, it was necessary, but they all have at least one of something, I think, now. Now let's just run through it quick to see. Oh yeah, actually, there we go. So this guy, Aoife, or girl, I should say. Aoife has no encounter cards. So encounters was either 0 or empty in that spreadsheet. If we go over here, right there, that's probably Aoife. See, this one's empty. And there it is. Aoife has 0 or empty. So going back to this, the encounters area is blank. So if we go back over here, if it's blank or 0, then we're going to display an empty string. So that's what's happening in the else. But let's get rid of all this stuff. So assuming it's true, we're going to do this stuff right here, right? Just this thing. We're going to use a function called plural. There's a whole bunch of functions in Component Studio that do cool things for you, that can help you, manipulate things. And so earlier I used one called UC first. Do you remember that? We uppercase the first letter of a string. Now we're using plural. So what this does is the first thing that we're going to give it is a number. And you can either just type in a number, so I could just type in 5 or whatever, Or I can put in a variable into that. So that's what I did in this case. So I'm going to give it a number. Then it's going to use that number in a couple different ways. We're going to give it, the second thing that we give it is a string. That's why it's inside of half quotes here. You can either use quotes or half quotes, or apostrophes if you like that word better. Inside of there, anything that you put inside of a quote or half quote anywhere in code in Component Studio, it treats that as a string inside of code. So my string, my text in this case, is %d. %d is just put a number here and format it as a number. If I had %s, there's a whole section on how you can format things. So I could do %s and it would be a string. It would format it as text, whatever. In this case, I want to format it as a number. So I do %d. Then the word encounter cards, dot period. Or I mean, period, not dot period. So a certain number of encounter cards. And if you see inside of parentheses, it's gonna do something funky here. It's gonna say, I'm only gonna display the stuff inside of parentheses if it's a number greater than 1, right? Actually, if it's not 1. If it's 0, it'll still put the S in there. So, all right, because traditionally in English, we pluralize zeros. So if it's a 0, it will say 0 encounter cards. Now in our case, it's not even going to say that because we have that ternary if condition there. So if it's 0, we don't want to display anything. But in this case, if that weren't there, it would say 0 encounter cards, 1 encounter card, 2 encounter cards, right? So that's what we're doing with plural. So that's a little bit more advanced. It's a little bit scarier, but it's really cool. Yeah. Right, yeah. So his question was, the parentheses s, is that part of the plural function? And yes, only the plural function knows how to interpret parentheses s as a thing. Now, at this point, it would be a good idea to bring up the help system for Component Studio, because how the hell are you going to know what that does, right?
What if it was a word like mouse and mice? Can you do that with plural?
Yeah, so it doesn't know how to do mouse or mice, but there is a way, like you can't just do a parentheses s to do that, but there is a way to do mouse and mice, and that's where the help system comes in. So help.component studio. So if you go to help.components.studio, that is how you get to the help system, and you can type in, what am I looking for? So in this case, let's look up functions. So I'm going to type in function. Oh, I misspelled it. All right, so template functions, I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I'm going to blow this page up because otherwise it's hard to read for you guys. So here's our help, all right? So the simple example it gives you right off the bat is that UC first that we used earlier. So all functions have to go inside of braces for them to work, because again, that's how Component Studio knows that it is code that we're working on, not just text, right? And then we have all these functions. So we can have the absolute value of something or so on. I'm not going to go through each individual function here. I'll let you guys deal with that. But what we will do is let's go look at plural. So it shows you, here's what the function is. Here's what it allows you to do. Here are some examples you could type. And here's the expected output of those examples. Every one of the functions is documented this way so that you have some nice, like, how do I do this kind of thing. And so you can see, for example, it's not mouse and mice, but you can see how we're doing candy versus candies, right? So you can even do stuff like this, where you can replace the number with a word. So anyway, that's simple enough.
So if you wanted to do like quotations in your text, how would you do that?
You put a backslash. Yeah. So his question was, if you want to put a quote or a half quote inside of some text that's already inside of a quote or a half quote, how would you get that in there? And how you do that is you use what's called an escape character, and that escape character is a backslash. So you put backslash quote, and now it treats those two characters as the character quote, as its own string. That is documented in the help also. So if you're looking for that later, you can find it. And I think Marcin had his hand up.
Is the same true for if you want a parentheses in there?
His question is the same true if you want a parentheses in your string? And I believe so, but I don't actually know. So I think it will escape any character, but you'll have to test that and let me know. Yes?
With what you have highlighted, you just have to make sure to write out all the words as high as the number could possibly go.
So her question is, with the one I have highlighted, do you have to write out all the numbers, if you want them to be words, do you write them out all to as high as the possible values would go? And the answer is maybe. It depends on how you want to handle it. So in my case, the example I'm using here is any number that comes after the numbers that I no longer have defined here, we'll use the last case. So in the last case, it's %d, so it's just going to display the number as a number rather than text. Okay? So the first, from 0 to 3, it will type out the word 0, or it'll type out no, 1, 2, 3, and then from that point forward, from 4 on, it will type out the number 4, number 5, number 6, and so on, because I put %d as the last thing. If I had the word 4, it would literally actually just say 4 for any number above 4. So don't do that. Well, unless that's what you want to happen, I guess. So, okay. Oh, wait, Dusty. So his question is, can you do \n for a new line in a text string? And I'm 99% sure the answer is yes. Although, generally speaking, you can literally just hit carriage return and have it go to the next line, and it'll actually read that too. You don't have to escape a character in there. Yeah, so his question is, like in a data set, do you have to put in a \n to have a new line? And I'm saying, if I wanted a new line here, I would just put down that and start typing again.
But that doesn't work in Google Sheets or whatever.
What? Okay, if it doesn't work in Google Sheets, then yeah, you would want to put in a /n, and that will work. But then just stop using Google Sheets and use something that works. So yeah.
I think you can press Shift Enter in Google Sheets.
Oh, he's saying you can hit Shift Enter in Google Sheets to get to put a carriage return in. So apparently, okay. Thank you for having expertise in that, because I don't have expertise in that. Okay.
That's the same thing in Excel spreadsheets.
Oh, okay. Apparently, Excel spreadsheets, you do that too, Shift Enter. So I use, when I'm using a spreadsheet, I actually use, I don't know, whatever comes with my Mac. I think it's numbers there. And you can just hit Enter and it works. So I didn't know that I had to do that. So I don't often use spreadsheets for things, as you can tell. I'm sorry? Alt-Enter in Google Sheets. Okay. All right. So, or if you can't do that, you can import it into Component Studio and just hit Enter here. You don't have to Alt-Enter or Shift-Enter or anything. Okay. Moving on. What else did I want to show you in here? I want to show you, personalities. Personalities? Component debts. Oh, yeah. Let's do... Where are we at here? Here we go. I want to go back to data sets, and I'm looking for colonists. Okay. So here's what I want to show you. We talked earlier about how you can have, there are other variables. So there's component variables come from your spreadsheet. And there are system variables that the system is calculating for you. There are two other types of variables that you can use throughout the system. There's a data set variables, which I'm about to show you. And these are variables that you use literally just in the data set, in your spreadsheet. These variables are only accessible from here. So, for example, if you end up typing the same text multiple times across multiple cards, and you want to be able to edit it in a single place, I created a variable called explore draw here, and it just says explore : tap to draw one extra card, right? So I just have some text that I want And I might need to edit that text in the future. I'm going to put it on multiple cards, or going to have this as an option. I don't want to have to edit it on multiple cards. I just want to edit it in one place. So I create the variable, and then I get my little thing here so I can copy it to my clipboard. And then I can just go in to the description of these guys. Of course, that actually, let me do something here. Let's go down here. You can set how high you want the row, the columns to be. So I'm just going to do that. Easier to get through here. So here we go. Here's one where I'm using it just a variable inside of my data set. So I'm just taking a variable, putting it out there, and using it over and over again, right? And that way, again, I don't have to, if I have something that's repeated on multiple cards, I can have it in one place, reuse it, only edit it in one place, and we're all good. Any questions on that? Does it make sense? Yeah, question.
Looks like the text at the top, I'm not mistaken, is the same as what the variable text, or was it different?
The variable text, this is saying draw 2 extra cards. The one down below said 1 extra card.
Oh, okay.
So this is unique to this person. So we didn't, I don't use a variable for it because it was unique to this person. There's lots of people that can draw 1 card. There's only her that can draw 2 cards. Yeah.
I saw that there were multiple data sets available. Is there a way to integrate multiple data sets, or do you want to, if you want to have all one deck, you need to have all the data for that deck in one data set?
So his question was, if I have multiple data sets, can I somehow merge them to create a single deck from that? The answer is no. However, there is something you can do. So let's say I have 3 different data sets of cards that I want all of those to run through the same design to ultimately render decks. What I can do there is a couple different things. I can go over to design, first of all, that's the first thing. And when you're in design, I can just quickly select a different data set to work with for that same design. So I can use the one design to render it multiple times for that data set. The other thing I can do is I can use my little drop down here to duplicate a design once it's in place, and then assign different data sets to each duplicate design. Now, the problem there is, of course, your designs could diverge. So you're no longer editing a single design. So if you want to keep it one design, do the thing I said first, which is just to set a different data set when you're doing your different renders. But if you don't mind that it diverges from that point, like, so maybe all the cards are mostly the same, but then you have a few different things that you want to do, then it's okay to duplicate it and start from a known good position and go from there. Okay, any other questions or moving on?
It's not possible to import these data set variables, you just need to type them inside Component Studio.
Right, data set variables cannot be currently imported. Typically, you only have 5 or 6 of them anyway. Like, I haven't seen anybody using hundreds of them, so there hasn't been a need to import data set variables, but if it becomes a need, we can do that.
You can type the variable name directly into your Excel sheet and then just define it in Component Studio.
Yes, his thought was you can define the variables in Component Studio and then just type them into your individual spreadsheet things, and yeah, you can do that. That doesn't help what she was asking about, which is how do I get the variables into Component Studio to begin with. So going back over to here, let's go back over to data sets and go to colonists. So we actually have to get the variables into this system down here, and as of right now, there is no way to actually import variables. But yeah, you can absolutely use those. You can actually use up here the variables that I'm using, like explore draw, right here. You could absolutely type that into your spreadsheet, and it's fine. Sorry, this thing is scratching me. Let me see if I can move it a little. All right. So yeah, you can absolutely use those anywhere you want. It's just text, right? So that's the beauty of Component Studio, is everything is just text. So you can use it in lots of different programs because almost everything can use text. And then when you ultimately get it to Component Studio, it knows how to interpret that text in a way that is useful. Okay. Next thing. Let's do this. So these are events. Specifically, the thing I wanted to show you was the back of this card. I was telling you before that I have different things that are in different decks, or like different decks or the same deck has multiple different backs of cards depending on what card it is. And it has different stuff on the backs of those cards. So what I did here was, let's go back over here to projects. This is where we're going to talk about project variables. This is the fourth type of variable. So you can create project variables. Project variables are global to the entire project. That means that you can use them in data sets, all of your data sets, and you can also use them in your designs. So if you happen to have global project variables in your design, you'll note that I have project variables actually down here at the bottom of my design. So I can actually copy and paste those very easily. And so the thing that's cool about that is if you have data that you are using all throughout and you want to be able to edit in a single place, you can do that. So for example, I have decks of cards that are people, and I have decks of cards that are encounters, but then I also have this events deck that creates cards that can go into all of the different decks. So by defining all of the information that I need for my backs, the color of the back, the title of the back, the little subtext that's going on here, like in this case, dilemmas, interrupts, missions, that sort of thing. By defining all of those in project variables, I can put them into the deck where encounters, there's an encounters deck, and when I edit it there, I'm getting the color right, I'm getting the text right, all that stuff is there. But then also in this events deck, I'm reusing that data in here, and in the event deck, I'm actually just telling it what type of card I'm doing. So the fronts of the cards all look like this. They have this read aloud now, some kind of bad thing happened. But we're trying to mask those things inside these other decks. They're like little sleeper cards that are coming out, occasionally. And so we need the back to look exactly like it belongs in a particular deck. And so that's where this kind of thing goes, where you might have project variables. Now, project variables are used in lots of different cool ways. If you have a particular icon or a logo or something like that that gets used all over the place, you can put the URL to the image in a project variable, right? If you have, let's say you want to get really crazy and you have like 10 different font sizes and colors that you're using in different places, you could define all your font sizes and colors in project variables and then just put the variable into all of your different font definitions. And then if you needed to update that size, like all of a sudden the ability text is supposed to be 11 pixels instead of 12 pixels or whatever, whatever thing it's supposed to be, you just update it in one place and it's updated throughout the entire project, right? So that's where project variables can be really, really helpful. And that's just one thing that you can do here in the projects section.
Are you saying that the dataset variables, you cannot use them in the design? Like if you were to fill them into one of the text boxes, it would give you an error?
Yes. So her question was, can you use the dataset variables in your design? And the question is, or the answer is no. Dataset variables are only to be used inside the dataset itself, because then the data set itself is exporting its variables as just the normal component variables, right? So, for example, let me do this. Let's go over to the colonists here, and let's say I wanted to use a data set variable. Let's just grab one of my things. I'll use this no tools variable, and I'm going to paste that into. Let's just put it in her name for now. So if I want to use the no tools variable in my design, what I would do is I put it into the field here, because then the field here that is called name, when I get to the design, will have the data from that variable.
But in there it'll say name variable.
Right, it won't say no tools, correct. And because this is a data set variable, meaning it is only available in the data set. So it's not available on any other page anywhere in the site. If you want it to be available anywhere else, you would use a project variable, because then the project variable is globally accessible everywhere, right? So these are just for local things that are within this one data set. That's what data set variables are. Okay. Any questions? Moving on? All right, moving on. Let's see here. Close this up. Let's get into something that almost no one here will use, but somebody will get really excited about. So let's say you have a deck of cards that you don't know what color you want it to be. I realize that's weird, right? In my case, I have a deck of cards where you are delving a dungeon. It's called Deftly Delving a Dangerous Dungeon. That's the name of the game. At level 1, stuff is easy. As you get further into the dungeon, it gets harder. So I basically wanted every card, the back of every card, to get darker as you went into the dungeon. So as we go through here, I'll just scroll through some of these, and you can see that the gradation on the cards is different depending on the number of the level, right? Now I could have gone through and defined what that color is, or I can just calculate a color on the fly based on the level, because I already have a gradient level, right? So there is a function, if we go over to our, or not a function, function, a hex string, right here. It allows you to return a hexadecimal thing. So colors we're using basically HTML colors here. It's hexadecimal colors. So a color is red, green, blue, right? But in a hex string in colors, it's actually 2 characters. So FF would be the maximum brightness of a particular color. So if we did red, green, blue, if I wanted bright red, it would be FF0000, right? Because it's red, green, blue. We don't want any green, we don't want any blue, so it's zeros and zeros for those. But the red, we want to be bright red, we want it to be F. So if I wanted it to be a medium red, maybe it's AA, or maybe it goes, so hexadecimal goes from 0 through 9, and then it starts to A, B, C, D, E, up to F. So that's your 16 characters. So I realize this is getting pretty crazy, all right? But what you're doing here is that you're able to actually pull off a gradient background color by, let me take this out of here and put it into something where you can actually read it. All right, so again, we're getting a little crazy, but I wanted to use this example because it can be used for other things. There's a bunch of different things going on in here. So the first thing that I want to point out, and I realize we're kind of all over the place here. The first thing I want to point out is this. This is a hexadecimal number. Anything in Component Studio, if you start it with a 0x, it knows that that's meant to be hex. It's meant to be a hexadecimal number. So I said, I want D. D is kind of a middling, color there. I want D. So we're doing, this is the darkest that this is going to get, is D. Or not a middling, it's a pretty dark color, or a pretty vibrant, whatever. So I'm going from almost black, which is D. So if this was FF across the board, it's FF, FF, FF. I've mixed all the colors, and when you mix all the colors in light, that is black, okay? So if I wanted it pure black, I would go with F, I'd use F. But in this case, I wanted to use D, because I don't want it quite all black when we get to level 10. So the darkest color it'll ever be is D's all the way across, right? So that's what I've defined here. Then I'm going to subtract from D, I'm going to subtract the level. So the level could be 10, it could be 9, goes all the way down to 1. Actually, it goes all the way down to 0 in my case. So it'll be basically D minus the level. So if I'm at level 10, it will subtract the most. If I'm at level 1, it will subtract the least. Wait, did I say that in reverse? I said that in backwards, yes. Right. Right, yeah. Anyway, yeah, you get what I'm saying. I'm sorry. So anyway, I'm subtracting that sort of stuff. And then I'm using a format here. I'm formatting X. I want it to format a hexadecimal number when it comes out. Remember before I said %D was a number? %S is a string. %x is a hex number. That's what you're going to, and this is all again in the code. And then finally, the last thing I'm doing is this little deal here. That period's not supposed to be there. X is a special operator in Component Studio. X means do this thing X number of times. So I said do it 6 times. So whatever letter I ultimately calculate, let's say it's A or F or D or whatever letter I ultimately calculate, I'm going to display that letter 6 times because I'm trying to do a gradient of gray. So that's what allows me then to have this kind of weird gradient going on there. So I wanted to show you this example, not because anybody's going to do what I just did, right? But there are 3 different things going on in there. We're learning how to format some text with the format command. We are learning how to deal with hexadecimal numbers. And then we're also learning about the X operator. And that opens us up to the whole concept of operators, which is the next thing I wanted to talk about. Funny enough, so let's search for operators. Okay. So again, we're getting into code here, and I'm sorry. It's going to be technical for some people. But some of these are going to be useful to everybody. And the first one is equals, double equals. The reason this is going to be useful to every single person in here is because at some point, if you end up using Component Studio, you're going to want to do a conditional display of something. So like we did with the colors, right? Or on the background colors of our very first example. If it was a dungeon card, we wanted a dark brown. If it was a treasure card, we wanted a light brown, right? So the example there was, if it's a dungeon card, variable dungeon, or card type, if it's card type equals, that's the double equal symbol, treasure, do this thing, right? And so that's where this operator comes in. And these comparison operators are very useful for that kind of conditional display. If something is greater than something else, we're going to display it, right? So let me give you another example of that. I want to try to put this into real context for you. Let's go over to Rendezvous here, and let's do design for hunting. All right, so here I'm designing a chit. All right, so just a token that people are going to get. Now, if I go into, obviously, if we go into a deer is actually a special resource in this particular game. It comes with 2 pelts. See the pelt icons there? But obviously, if you have a berry, berries don't have pelts. So that's weird, right? You don't want that in there. So this is where that conditional really comes in. If we're going here, if extra pelts is empty, we aren't going to display anything. But if it has something in it, we're going to display this first pelt. So if we go to rabbit, it displays a pelt because it's above 1. But now if we use that, going back to operators for a second one, we've got that second, we've got the second pelt. If I just put the variable name in there, that's not going to do anything. Or I mean, it's going to display the pelt for the rabbit too. We'd have 2 pelts on the rabbit, right? So for the deer, I want to do this thing. Extra pelts is greater than 1, then we're going to display the second pelt. See how that kind of very simple operator can be very useful even in a very simple way. You don't have to be a programmer to do these kind of crazy things, right? This is pretty straightforward stuff. And there's lots of examples of this kind of stuff out on the website. There's also videos. And again, tonight at our little workshop, I'd love to work with you on getting your designs into Component Studio if that's something that you're interested in doing. And I can show you kind of how to do these things so that they're not quite so scary. So anyway, there are tons of operators. And again, I'm not going to cover all of them. We did cover the ternary condition earlier, which is that one where something is true, do this, otherwise do this other thing. We had covered some of the math operators. You know, everybody knows math. There's all kinds of operators in here to do all kinds of crazy things. I'm not going to cover all of them. They might be useful to you, they might not be, depending on your level of interest in going down this particular rabbit hole, okay? Component Studio does not have to use code. You can just use, other than just variables. You can just use whatever you want, just paste a variable in there, or if you want to get in and do some crazy stuff, you can do that. So let's go, since we're deep into this code stuff, let's go back into something that's a little more fun. And let's go to designs, I think testing, yeah. Oop. Okay, so let's go into something that's a little bit, that'll get you amped up a little bit. So this, tap this card and spend X. Okay, so if you were making, there's lots of games that'll have something like that, some kind of text like that. Like, use this card and then I need to spend a resource. And this goes back to, somebody was asking a question back here about like putting an icon inside of text, right? So one way you can do that is, let me get back out of here. Let's go back over to our fonts. And let's add I have created a font right here that's got some stuff in it. So let's go, and I've added that now to my palette, right? So that will appear in my designs. So now if I go back over here and I do this test, I've got my, wait, was I not in test? What was I in? Oh, DDD. There we go. All right, there's my text. So if I go in here and open this back up and I select A, B, C, whatever, it's just going to do a regular font. That's fine. But if we go into advanced and we select rendezvous, now we'll have this other color in here, or this other type of font in here. So now if I do, hopefully you can see that, it says tap this card and spend B, and so B is showing up as a little fish. Maybe I want that icon to be a little bit bigger. I can do that. I can set icons to be a little bigger. Maybe I want it to be a completely different icon. Let's do H, something like that. Now it's a log. Or I want it to be R, and now it'll be a fur, right, or a pelt. So I can inline right into my text icons. Or maybe I want it to be spend R and T, right? So I can inline multiple icons into my text. And if let's blow this up a little bit so it's a little easier for you guys to see from back there. Okay, so you're getting your icons inlined into your text. The cool thing about this is that those icons are literally just a font, so they'll scale infinitely. You can have any size you want, and you can style them like a font. So, for example, maybe whenever you have an icon like that, we want to have a highlight behind it of red, and maybe we want the icon itself to be white. So I can format that kind of stuff and have that kind of going along. That's one way that you can put icons. But this requires you to build a font. There's another way. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask about image.
Right. So, yeah, go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, can you put padding around them? Is there a setting?
There's,
so the image would be more inside the highlight?
there is not a way to put padding in, there's not a way to put a padding in the alternate font highlight. What you'd have to do is design your icons to not go outside that area. So in this case, this particular font was not something I cared about doing highlights on, so I wasn't worried about squishing down the font. What you can do is the other thing you can do is I think this will help, yeah. So the line height is set at 100 because the first font is 100 pixels. So if I set the icon font to be 80 pixels, let's say, then it's only 80 tall, and therefore it'll fit inside the highlight. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's not centered
Again, that's how it's positioned inside the font when you're designing the font. That's how the image is positioned inside the font. It's not ever centered. You're just noticing that it's not centered because I've drawn a box around it. So again, when you're designing the font, that's when to solve those problems. This font was not designed for going inside this highlight, so therefore it has that problem. Did somebody else have a question? Okay, yeah.
Could you show the text on this one more time? Just the text.
Oh, yeah. Let me, I'll pull this out into this so you can see it bigger. So that's the text that I got in there, right?
And anything in asterisk is going to be an alternate font.
Anything in asterisk will go inside the alternate font, yeah. And so that allows you to kind of do stuff, but again, you have to design a font. Designing fonts has enormous advantages because I'll give you the biggest one. When you design a font that has your icons in it, then you can import that font into Illustrator, InDesign, GIMP, wherever, and you'll be able to use your icons in all of the programs that you use when you design your game and inline the image directly into the text of those things, right? Most programs don't give you a nice way to insert image icons directly inline in the text. You could create a little gap and shove an image there, but that's a very manual placement kind of thing, right? So designing your own font with your icons has enormous advantages if you're using those icons outside of this. So for example, when I wrote the rule book for Rendezvous, I'm using those icons all over the place in there. And as I'm changing paragraphs, as the length of the paragraph changes, all of a sudden I have to manually move a bunch of icons around. Screw that. That's a pain in the ass. So designing your own fonts has a huge advantage for that, and you can use that font then in Component Studio this way. But there are ways to use images inline, and I'll get to that next. What's up?
So in Font Creator 10 plus or 11 plus, there's support for color fonts. Is that supported in Component Studio? So could I design a color icon?
So his question is, in some program that I didn't hear the name of, that it allows you to design color fonts so that the icons are like emojis, where they have colors like built in to them. The answer is I've never tested it, so I don't know. Potentially it could work. As long as it's a true, so Component Studio can use any true type font or any open type font. So as long as those are supported features of true type and open type fonts, I would think that they would work. But again, I don't have that program and I haven't tried it, so I don't know. Yeah.
Does Component Studio support emojis?
Component Studio does not currently support copying and pasting an emoji. And that's because the emoji isn't part of the font that you're rendering. That is a feature request people have asked for, and it is something I'm actually going to try to work on building, but it's not something that it does currently. So, okay. Next, let's show you how to inline an image into your text here. So let's say I wanted to spend this card an R and T plus, now let's put in a image. So how would you know how to do this? You'd go to the help, right? So let's do that. I'm going to go out here. Tell me what you would search for. Inline. I heard inline image right here. Custom icons with inline text. Does that sound like what we're looking to do? Okay, we'll click on that. All right. So this shows you how to make icon fonts. Oh, inline images. Look at that. All right, cool. So it says I could just copy this little thing right here. Let's go back to my design. Oop, that's a different thing. We don't care about that one anymore. Here we go. Boom. So I'm just going to paste that in there. Let's see if it renders. Oh, I put it in the middle of the... Probably shouldn't have done that. Doop. Let's take that back out of there and put it here. Boom. So it allowed me to put an image inline into the text, and I can type more text. Okay. And yeah, so his question was, will the image scale to be dynamic with the text? And the answer is, of course it will. This is Component Studio. So I'll just go ahead and make that small, and you can see that it is scaling it to the size of the text. Now we still have that other icon in there, which is weird, but I'm putting it inline in the text, in the main text. If I put it inline in our icon text, it would match the icon size. Does that make sense? So whichever font it's inline with, it's going to scale to the font that you're with.
If it asterisk in front of it, would it put a red background behind your image if it was a PNG file?
I don't know if this one has that, but yes, it would. Let's. So this is partially transparent, so you are seeing the little thing going there. So yeah, I wasn't sure if that image was transparent or not. So anyway, good little demo. So anyway, like I said, as you're scaling your fonts, it will automatically wrap, it'll automatically scale, whatever, with whatever font that you're working with. And so that's a really cool way to introduce icons in. Now let's look at the text quick. I'll get to your question in just a sec. I want to blow this up so that it's easier to see. So let's get rid of the URL. You can use any URL you want in here. So what you're looking at is put a URL inside of this little thing. So you're doing less than, pipe, your URL, pipe, greater than. Okay? So whatever URL you have inside of there, it's going to say, treat this as an icon in line with the font. And so, of course, that means you can use images that you've uploaded to Component Studio or images that you have on Dropbox or whatever. It also means that I don't want this ugly thing in here. I can say, do I have, we're going to have to go back and change this in just a second, but let's go down here. Foot image, wand image. We'll use wand image. Let's do that. So I can go over here and take this variable and put that variable inside there. And I got to get this out of my asterisks now. Well, I don't have to, but I want to. Uh-oh. That image, wand image, doesn't exist. Let's see. I did just create this on the fly, so maybe that image isn't actually in the data set. Yeah, in this particular one, it wasn't there. So let's just delete that row. We don't need that anyway.
Do you need the HTTP?
Yes, you need a full URL. So when I go back to here, let's go back to our DDD here. And now there's our wand image, right? So you can just use variables inside that little thing as well, and that'll give you the URL that you were looking for. So that is, I'm sorry?
Is that a project variable?
That was just a component variable. So I grabbed that from down here, component variable, wand image was the column. So let me pull this back out here, put it into the big text to make it easier to see. So you can see that, and I'll put this on a new line to make it more understandable. Put this on a new line as well. So what we've got here is we've got, oh, take that out of there. Don't need that either. That's not, that's from this text editor. It automatically placed that in there. So anyway, it's, again, less than, pipe, then we put in our URL, which in this case is contained inside of a variable, and then we put our pipe and our greater than again. So now we've got our inline images, right? We can do these little icons, and it'll automatically scale with the text. It'll automatically word wrap with the text, all of that kind of stuff. So it's easy peasy to get yourself some images in line with your text. That said, I want to go back to that whole font thing again. So it's cool because you're getting to reuse the images you already have, right? So it's easy, right? But if you do end up having to use those icons in a bunch of text in like a rule book or something, now you're going to have to manually position them because InDesign isn't going to take those icons and automatically scale them to the text, automatically word wrap them with the text, all that kind of stuff. You're going to have to manually position it, or Scribus or whatever program you're using, Word, any of those. So that can be, it can be more problematic, and that's where that kind of using a font is an advantage. So you have to weigh which one will work better for your situation, but Component Studio gives you the tools to do this if this is easier for you. Okay. You had a question, I'm sorry, that I didn't come back to.
So I was curious whether you can remove the size from your alternate font and have it just automatically use the size of the font that it's embedded in.
Can you remove the size?
So say I set my font, my alternate font to be 90, and the normal size of the basic font is like 50.
Okay.
Just delete out the 90 and have it automatically resize itself to whatever it's embedded in.
I see what you're saying. So his question was, can the alternate font kind of default its size to the standard font? So when we're going in here, when we're looking at a text block, we define our first font, our main font here, and it has a size. And then we have our alternate font, and it has a size as well. So he's wondering is, could I just empty out this space here, and it would automatically default to the size of this font up here? The answer is currently no. That could be easily done. Nobody's ever brought it up, so just submit it as an idea, which is a great thing I should point out right now, actually. Let's do this. So on Component Studio, if you go to the bottom of any page in Component Studio, there's a Suggest Ideas link, and you can just go in there and submit any idea that you have. Like, I wish it had this feature, and I'm not saying we'll definitely do it, but we'll at least consider it. This is where we keep track of all that stuff. And there's also a voting system in here, so look through the other ideas that people have submitted and vote for the ones that you like. The ones that float to the top are the ones that are higher priority to us, right? Because more people want it. So if you're looking here, we've got all these ideas. They all have a number of votes associated with them, if I sort this by votes. So right now, the number one idea has 35 votes to be able to drag steps to reorder them, right? So, all right. So that's something that we know people are interested in. As we said at the beginning of this whole session, that's something that we're looking to work on because of that. So we don't have much time. There's one other thing I wanted to show you quick. So I'm going to forgo questions for right now and do this one last thing, and then we can do a couple more questions and go from there. So the last thing I want to show you is this. So this doesn't matter what the game is, but this is showing tables. So a lot of times you need to organize data into columns and rows, right? And you could manually position all of your stuff in columns and rows. However, then all of a sudden, one row needs 2 lines, or it needs 2 lines of text or something, and then that screws up all of your positioning. You can do all that with variables and create something crazy, but we have a table system. And so how the table system works is you define your table, like where is it going to go, how wide is it, how many columns does it have, how many rows, and that's all over here. Let me blow that up a little bit. So how many columns, how many rows, that sort of stuff. Should I outline the table? How much padding should be in the cells? All of that kind of stuff. So you got all of your normal table stuff going on there. That is just one step in the in your overall order of things. From there, you can click this Add Cell Content button, and if you do, it'll just add one more thing to the bottom of this, which I shouldn't have done because now I'm ruining my own game design. But anyway, so let's kill that quick. Oh, crap. Now I just added a thing that I didn't want to, whatever. I'll get back to it later. Okay, so I shouldn't be live working on one of my own games. That's the thing I'm learning here. So what you can do is you'll add a cell, and that adds one of these rows right here like this. So it's just by default going to add a text cell. However, you can actually use any type that you want. So you could have it draw a box. You could throw an image in there. You could use an image grid. There's all kinds of different types of steps that Component Studio does. And so you could put all of those into different cells in your table. So you could have one cell is just a bunch of images or something, right? Because there are these special functions. There's cell X, cell Y, cell width, and cell height. So it can pull that information from the table It'll pull how big should this cell be and where should it be positioned from the table. So that way, as you change variables in the table, it will dynamically size that particular step to fit that area of the table. And the thing that's cool about that is then, of course, I can say I need a whole bunch of I need more padding than I originally thought on my table. So let's say I want my padding to be, instead of 10 pixels, I want it to be 30 pixels. Now it should, if we get, I'm blown up too far here. I can't see if it's rendering. Nope, it didn't render. Why did it not do that? Oh, there it goes. Yeah, it did finally render. Okay. So it's putting in more padding, but there isn't more room for the more padding in this particular case. So I just put an outline on the table. We should be able to see that happen. There we go. So we got the outline going there. Anyway, when you're doing these things, you can actually live change the parameters of the cell, and as long as the content will fit the new parameters, it'll put it in there. This little bar at the top, by the way, there's a little blue bar, that tells you that it's rendering. On this particular design, I did something that's really bad and you should never do. So I'll tell you what it is. This background image that's on this card is way too freaking big. It's enormous. And so every time it renders this thing, it has to load that enormous image and re-render it. So do yourself a favor and either size your background image appropriate to the thing you're working on, or while you're working, turn off your background image, like I'm about to do here, and then that will make, eventually, that will make it all, oh, I should turn off this side too.
That renders processing in the cloud, not on your local machine.
Right, yeah, this is all processing out in the cloud. So what it's doing is it's having to download it from a repository, render it, do all this thing. It's doing like hundreds of thousands of calculations back behind the scenes, and it takes forever when you're doing that. So either don't use a giant image or turn it off when you're editing, and then all the editing processes will go considerably faster when you're doing this. So the next thing that I was going to show you, yeah, I realize I'm out of time. I'm going to do one last thing. I'm using a table here, right here. This is also a table. The reason I wanted to use a table here is that I wanted to have lines between each of my actions, but I didn't know where to put the lines because there's a certain amount of text in there. So by just turning it into a table and making those cells, I can say between each cell, give me a line. And so that allowed me to use a table that will then render those lines. So it's another reason to use tables.